We'll call the meeting to order. I'd like everybody that can stand do so to say the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Alright, all board members are present this evening.
All right, approval of the agenda. Motion, please.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Moved and supported. Vote please.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next item, consent agenda approval.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support. Moved and supported. Vote
Mrs.
please.
Chenoweth? Yes.
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 And yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's starting to get warmer out, and now we're at that stage where this room gets hot, cold, and so bear with us and don't breathe. All right, the first thing I'd like to announce is we had our hazardous waste day 2 weeks ago, Saturday? See, it was just last week, but the year before we did about 650 cars through there. This year we moved it to the high school and still had people out on Milford Road lined up, and we ended up with 886 vehicles that went through that session. There was more than that actually showed up, but that's what we ended up having to pay for. So Mary Pat played Queen Trash Picker, and we filled her pickup truck up and then ran it through, and I think we had a few other people that did the same, so it was a very successful event.
She sold a lot of stuff, didn't she?
And I actually ended up trash picking myself, and I pulled a monitor out of her truck, and I went, here we go, taking stuff home again. So, next item I'd
Can I
like
say
to
something
do.
about there real quick?
Yes, you may.
Since I was one of the people checking IDs, I want to thank the people of Highland for being very patient, because obviously, in the past, usually people come in by 7:45, they're already rolling in, and then there's a lull. We didn't have any lulls the whole time. It went nonstop to about 12:30. There was really only a couple people who were not very happy. Otherwise, everybody was like, well, it's for a good cause, and we're glad to be here. So, the people of Highland, I want to say thanks, because easily, I could be one of those in line too, being frustrated, but they were coming and just kept coming and coming and coming. So it was good though. A lot of stuff got taken in, so it was good.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
As a member of the Knights of Columbus, Rick Hamill was gracious enough to allow our Knights of Columbus to make nutritious Tootsie Rolls available for donations, and it was well received. The main problem we had is that the new laws say that we can't stand on the roads anymore and solicit or make them available. So by the township, through Rick letting them do that, they raised almost $1,000 for that event. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that really turned out very well. And like Brian said, I actually was able to talk to almost every single car that went through there, and the word thank you was thanks all the time, and there was just one or two people that, and you can kind of understand it, but to have something go off that well and have that many people show up, the real important part was how many people believe in not letting that stuff end up on the side of the road or in the drains or down the sewer. So thanks again on that one. Appreciate it. The next item is recognition for James Gorman. I don't know how many people knew Jim Gorman. He passed away recently, and he was a person that, he loved his town, and he committed himself in a lot of ways. Jim started in 1992 on the Zoning Board of Appeals as chairman for 2 years, then moved to the Planning Commission for 6 years until 2002. He then joined the Downtown Development Authority for 4 years until 2006. And after a short break, Jim joined the Zoning Board of Appeals in 2011 for 2 more years. He served Highland for more than 20 years. That's pretty impressive. I think Mary has got him beat by a little bit in serving the community. But as an individual that wasn't elected, I think that's pretty impressive to commit yourself to that. So.
When I first met him, he served on the Senior Advisory Council also.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
So he's covered a lot of bases, and he'll be missed. So we'll put him up on our Hall of Fame up there eventually, get a picture of him with the others that have been committed to the community. So anybody that knows Jim will know that he's moved on to a better place, and we appreciate everything he did. So the next item. Recently, we were looking to do some fix-ups in the cemetery, and one of the things that is a problem in them is the roadways get mushy and lumpy and out of control. And we'd like to recognize American Aggregates Levy Corporation for donating 230 tons of gravel for us to repair those roads. So that's pretty generous gift. That's a lot of money to hand over, but it goes to a good place. So Memorial Day, we should have our cemeteries in very good condition, and we'll be continuing to work on those through the year. As anybody who had come to the medical marijuana part 1 that we had at 59 West, Mary Pat Janowith took on the duty to, one of the thick questions that came up, or multiple times, was what about the other side of the picture? And we agreed that we would put together medical marijuana part 2. So that'll be at M59 West on June 7th at 7 p.m. So spread the word if you want to be have a voice or to hear what that's about. And so please show if you understand where we're going with that. It's a decision that's going to have to be made here at the board at some point in time, so we really appreciated the commentary we got at the last one. Now we have a little bit different perspective and get the voice out there a little further. So now, public comment. Anybody have anything they'd like to say?
Nobody else does.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I have Lynn Castard, 1528 Road. I have an announcement. This weekend, Highland Conservancy is going to do Adopt a Road for a couple hours Saturday, May 13th from 10 to 12. We're looking for any volunteers. If anybody's got a couple of hours, it's going to be Harvey Lake Road. Just picking up the papers and the trash to kind of clean up Highland. And we provide all the gloves, the vests, and the bags. So if anybody's interested, we'll be out there at 10 o'clock. We're going to meet at Spring Mill School.
That's this Saturday?
This Saturday
at
10 a.m. We'll meet there at 10 o'clock. And one other item I had on the agenda I wanted to just speak to here on 9B. There was consideration for Highland Activity Assistant wage increase. I just wanted to, I read that over, and it's going to be a 20% request for that job. There was no job description in the material to understand what that person would be doing for that 20% increase. So just wondered if that could be spoken to
Sure.
regarding that.
All right. Any other public comment? Judy?
I just wanted to thank everybody that came to the prayer breakfast on May 4th. Hopefully that's the first of many to come. We had just under 100 people there. So we had a great turnout. We had 5 pastors and a rabbi that spoke to us. And we've had offers of 2 churches for next year. All the pastors want to come back, and they're going to start meeting on a regular basis. So lots of good things came out of that. And hooray for the community. I think it's a great step forward.
And that was not a start to a joke.
No, it wasn't. And that was in conjunction with the Highland White Lake Business Association, so good partnership.
That was very, very, very nice. Any other public comment?
I have one.
Yes.
Founder's Day is coming up, the Founder's Day Parade on May 20th, which is a Saturday, and it starts, you can come have breakfast at 8 a.m. at the fire station, correct? And then the parade starts at 10, and then from there, there's a plant sale.
Yes, there is.
I think there's a kids zone. Is there anything else I'm missing?
Ice cream social.
Oh, my own ice cream social for the Highland Day. It starts at 12 o'clock and runs till 2, and a silent auction, and those proceeds do go back to the improvement of the downtown streetscapes and education for our businesses and such, so.
Okay, in the back there.
And on a sidebar to that, community transportation is going to be providing free rides for seniors and disabled adults that would like to come out and join in the festivities. You just need to call the office by Thursday to be put on the schedule.
Thank you. All right, any more? Right.
Sorry.
Yes.
Any idea where they're talking about, where we're putting that medical marijuana place yet? Any ideas?
What we're doing and what?
The medical marijuana facility, if by some chance, any ideas at all?
There's not even if there's any facility, it would have to be where it would be legally required by the state, which either be.
I just wondered if you had anything.
No, there's no spots that anybody's picked out. It has to be in industrial or agricultural. Now, agricultural opens up some pretty big bags.
Right.
So it's one of those things you gotta think about. But, no, we don't, there hasn't been any talk about pick and choose and decide, and we're leaving that until we get all the information. The state has not produced any of the final language for the law either, so that doesn't happen until after 2018, so the start of 2018, they should have their language down. So pretty hard to make a decision on something that's up in the air.
Right.
All right, any more? All right, we'll move on to presentations. So tonight we have our auditors here. What did I miss?
7
Firefighters.
Can I address
Like
the
I
board
couldn't
too?
see it, you know? I forgot the color code.
Follow 6.
Excuse me, guys, I'm sorry I did that too. This is much more important than the next week.
Sorry,
I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. If you can look back in the back corner, you'll see a bunch of your firefighters here tonight. They're here tonight because it is my pleasure to announce that 2 members of our department will progress from probationary firefighter status to the rank of firefighter. Firefighter Alex Wachowski and firefighter Chris Thompson. On average, it takes roughly 12 to 18 months to achieve the required certification of Michigan Firefighter 1 and 2, Emergency Medical Technician, and logging of vehicle operation and HTFD community and operation competency testing. To put this into perspective, each candidate must complete approximately 700 hours of firefighter training and competency testing, maintain a minimum response at 15% of all emergency calls. We run approximately 1,300 runs a year, all while juggling their careers and family lives. I've asked tonight that the board recognize these individuals and swear them in. Alex, if you can come forward. With Alex tonight is his wife Samantha, son Camden and Xander, parents John and Diane, Kim and Mark, grandparents Tim and Valerie, and wonderful in-laws John and Angie. I read it verbatim. If I can get Camden to come up front, please.
Hey, Chief, would you step over this way and then we can get you in the video?
I want to be in the video.
And then all of you move over just a little bit this way.
Oh, hold on, hold on, 1 second. Before you give me that, I need the old one. Before you give him that.
Trade in.
Camden is going to present his dad with his helmet. As you see, this is our old helmet the probationary firefighters wear. It's the older style, still NFPA compliant, but it identifies them as a probationary firefighter in Highland Township.
Camden, if you'd like to present your dad with his new helmet.
Thank you, bud.
Congratulations, Doug. Stay up here. Chris? Chris Thompson, with him tonight is his wife Kelly, kids Cole and Evan, Grandma Gloria, Aunt Deb, mother-in-law Vicky, father-in-law Terry, and great-grandpa James. If Kelly can come up for just a second. Okay. If I can have this. Kelly will present Chris with his new helmet. Alex started his employment with the township on August 1st of 2015, and Chris started his employment February 1st of 2016. They've done their time, they've done their duty, and they've served you all very well. I'd like to welcome them aboard as full-time or full fire.
You still gotta swear it, so what words do you want to swear?
Alright, I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties of firefighter
and I will faithfully perform the duties of firefighter
in and for the Township of Highland, County of Oakland, and State of Michigan.
and for the county,
Township
Township of Highland, County of Oakland, State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my abilities, so help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, but more importantly, can we get you guys' families to stand up for just a second, please? We'd like to thank you for allowing them to do this. It's many nights away, missing dinner, missing family functions, missing holidays, everything that you guys miss and allow these guys to do. Thank you so much for allowing it.
Yeah, you guys are not obligated to stay. But you're gonna miss a really good talk about it.
We'll be honored for it.
Don't worry, you'll be on YouTube.
Coming out the door.
Okay, I guess we can. Our next item,
Absolutely.
audit. Thanks for coming. And tonight we have Pam Hill, who's partner, Ramzi Abdullah, and Ali Phillips. And they're going to do a presentation to show you where we stand in an audit for 2016.
Is this good? Does this work for everyone? All right. Well, thank you for having us here this evening. We are here to address the results of the audit from the December 31st, 2016 fiscal year end. We do spend over 300 hours a year auditing the books and records of the township. So as you can imagine, we're out here for a couple weeks. And we do want to just thank a few people, especially Rick, Judy, Tammy, and then Amy and Karen. Since we are out here for such a long time, not only do they have to do their everyday duties, but they have to deal with us too. So we do appreciate all the professionalism that we get during the audit. It helps to make it a lot more efficient and smooth. You do have in your packets today, you have your financial statements, so you have the spiral bound copy, and then you'd also have the letter addressed to the Board of Trustees. So we will cover both of those today. We do have a graph presentation to go over the results and look at some of the trends instead of going through all 60-some pages of the financial statements. Although we're more than happy to go through those at any time. We did have a couple-hour draft meeting with the 3 full-time elected officials in which we went through the results of the audit in a lot of details, probably 2 to 3 hours. But again, more than happy to answer any questions at any time in any more detail that you might have. 2 specific pages that I did want to cover in the financial statements are pages 1 and 2. That is the audit opinion letter. So that's what the township hires Plant Moran to provide. And it was an unmodified opinion this year, which is the highest level of assurance that you can receive from your auditors. And basically what that means is that the numbers as they are presented within the financial statements are free of material misstatement. So it doesn't talk at all about the financial position or condition of the township, and that's what we're hoping to kind of cover a little bit today within our graphs. So with that, I will turn it over to Allie, and she's gonna start taking us through the graph presentation.
Okay, Rick, if you don't mind going to the next slide. The first slide that we're going to look at are the revenue sources for the general fund. As you can see, the largest source of revenue for the general fund is state shared revenue at 50%, which is approximately $1.5 million. You can also see that property taxes is only about 14% of the general fund's revenue that's coming in. So again, I'd like to highlight that the majority of it is from the state share revenue.
I think that's a common misnomer that people see their property tax bill, they think it's all going to you because you collect it, right? But so much of it goes to the county and the schools and all the other things that people pay for. So we just wanted to point this out that actually the state is providing 50% of the revenue is coming in to run the general operations of the township, not police and fire.
Moving on to the next slide, expenditures for the general fund. You can see by far the township's largest expense is general government at approximately $1.8 million, which is roughly 76% of expenditures. The general fund accounts for primarily the general administration of the township. And as we noted on the previous slide, this is funded mostly by state shared revenue. Also, I'd like to point out that the general fund pays for public safety, which is this orange piece right here. Moving on to the next slide, revenues for all governmental funds. Revenue is relatively consistent compared to the prior year, with a small increase in property taxes, which you can see here. However, that's to be expected, considering property tax value increases roughly by the rate of inflation each year. Moving on to the next slide.
Keep in mind the slide that you just talked about, that has your police, your fire, everything in it, your new transportation fund, all of those things in it, where the first 2 slides were just the general fund.
No, that's fine. So this next slide that we're going to cover is total taxable value. This graph shows the decline of property tax value from 2008 to 2012, and then the slow road to recovery to get back up to where it was in 2008. So you can see in the current year, the township had approximately $704 million in total taxable value, and it will take until about 2026 to be back at that $840 million that was reflected in 2008. And this is because, as I noted earlier, tax value can only increase the lesser of 2% or the rate of inflation.
So you'll see that the 2% on there is just a rough estimate to give you a picture. The last couple of years you have been a little bit over 2%, which is great because of some new growth and things like that. So, this is just kind of a big picture. And really the main thing is just to see how quickly it can drop, but how long it takes for it to get back up there.
Moving on to the next slide, expenditures for all governmental funds. So again, this isn't just the general fund, this is for all funds. So like Sam said, transportation fund, fire fund, all of those. You can see here in this first section that police increased slightly. This is mostly due to a $130,000 increase in billings. The next section over fire also had a little bit of an increase for the current year. This is for new uniforms and a new fire vehicle that was purchased during the current year. And then moving over a couple to the general government, you can see that it decreased slightly, and this is mostly relating to a decrease in capital projects throughout the year. Moving on to the next slide. Components of fund balance for all governmental funds. While the township's fund balance increased during 2016, the largest increase of roughly $788,000 is reflected in assigned fund balance, which is this orange piece right here. This relates to a $1 million assignment during the current year for capital projects. Unassigned fund balance at the end of the year was approximately $1.2 million, which is down approximately $170,000 from the prior year. And moving on to the next slide, we have general fund balance as of December 31st. So again, you can see that designated and assigned increased by that $788,000. And again, this is due mostly to that $1 million assignment for capital projects.
I think the big thing here is, so your fund balance, you know, if you go back and look at 2012, you know, you've done a nice job over the years of really monitoring your costs, and especially if you would go back to that expenditure slide, it's a little bit skewed because you have capital in there, which can fluctuate in any given year. But if you were just to look at your regular operating costs, you'll see that you've done a nice job at saying, okay, well, our revenues just decreased 20%. How are we going to handle this? So you've made the cuts that you needed to in those times, and you know, you've really been monitoring those. You can tell that when you look at your budget to actuals and kind of where you ended up. And that's really allowed you to be in the position that you are today. And you've had to do it by putting off a lot of capital. That's what everyone's done for the last 10 years, frankly. So everywhere we go, that has been the focus lately. Legacy costs, which you are in a very unique position, and one that I think the township should feel very proud of, is that your legacy costs are very, very low, almost non-existent really, in comparison to probably 80% of the communities, if not 90% of the communities out there. So you should feel very good about that. But what that allows you to do is, now that you've kind of cut those expenditures, you've been able to right-size your operations to your new norm for revenue purposes. Now that you're starting to see minimal growth in your property tax, you know, 2.5%, 3%, you can start to look at some of those things that you have put off, you know, capital-related items, and start to say, okay, well, how can we start to fund those by looking at a capital plan and that kind of thing. And really, that's been the focus everywhere we go lately. You know, we've put off infrastructure needs, we've put off purchases, things like that. What can we do now that we're starting to see things turn a little bit in how are we going to fund those types of things in the future? So I know in talking to several members of the board, that is a focus, and it's a common, I have to say, it's a common theme. Like I said, everywhere we go, that's where everyone's turning their attention to. How are we going to fix our roads? You know, working through the road commission or with the county. What are our main things that we need done that we've put off for so long because we've had to?
And one thing to add to that, if you recall, a couple months ago when we had a different presentation, but we're kind of talking about how to read the financials and what some of these numbers mean. And, so I just kind of like to reaffirm that the orange bar would be the unassigned fund balance. So I think a lot of times somebody would make a mistake of looking at total fund balance and using that as a metric, but it's really the unassigned number that's actually available for general use.
I think moving on to the final slide, the government-wide net position. This slide represents a long-term picture of the township's infrastructure, and as you can see, it's been relatively consistent throughout the years. That's all that I have. Do you guys have any questions, or if you have anything that you want to add?
Yes.
I did have a question. On the designated fund balance, it went up $500,000. What is that earmarked for?
I think that was the capital.
Yeah.
Capital
Yep.
improvements.
And why did we move that money in there?
So we could do things on some of that was cemetery for
Yep.
fixing repairs
I'm sorry, I
on
can't
the
hear
building.
you.
What's that?
I can't hear you.
Oh, for like cemeteries, fixing the building and major repairs. There's a paving project that needs to happen at the annex. There's some lighting issues on the building. So they're all related to things that have been held off for a number of years, and it's not that we degraded the value of any of our assets, but by holding off, but it's at that point where we really need to address those before they get into a higher cost level, so that's just some of it.
And I think you're talking about like getting all the department heads on the same page with some type of capital plan as far as, you know, what are our immediate needs, what are kind of the nice to haves, and what are those like, okay, well, you know, we put those off so many years, and starting to kind of look at capital from a long-term planning perspective, and, you know, from there, you can figure out how you're gonna fund those potential needs, but I believe that was one of the things that we had discussed as far as getting that plan together and getting everyone from the township involved, you know, bringing it to the board and whatever, and starting to think about how we're gonna handle those long-term needs.
And I brought the unassigned into the ranges for the fund balance policy.
Please talk loud because we have this behind us,
If-
okay?
Our fund balance policy says that our unassigned fund balance should be within 40 to 60% of our expenditures for the year.
And what's that then?
The fund balance had risen above that, so we put it in capital improvement so that we could come up with a capital improvement plan and move forward and save it for those kinds of projects.
And keep in mind, obviously, having it in that category doesn't give anyone the authority to spend it, it's just, it's a management's designation of, you know, where they're looking for the future.
Does that require board action to go with that?
Not to assign, you know?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody in the audience?
If not, I think Rumsey's gonna cover the letter to the board.
So included in your board packet, there should be a 10-page letter. That's the letter to the board. This contains all of the required communications from us as your auditors. And there's also some additional information about informational updates and legislative information. So I'll cover it at a very high summary. The first section contains internal control matters related to the audit. So as we have in prior years, during the course of our audit, we did assist management with identifying several year-end closing journal entries. Management has reviewed these entries, accepted them, posted them, and they are reflected in the financial statements. The second section of this letter is if we were to have any significant audit findings, if we were to have any disagreements with management, or difficulties encountered in performing the audit, this is where we would be communicating those to you in the second part. I'm happy to report that we do not have any items of that nature to report to you. So all of the language in that section is pretty boilerplate and just saying there are no blank. And then lastly, the third section of the letter. This is the section that I think of as like the latest news from Lansing. It has industry updates on pretty much everything that's going on in the state for local units of government. These are not necessarily items that are specific to the township, but items that you might find relevant. So rather than going through each item, I invite you to read through them, or if you already have, and if there's anything that you have questions on that is of particular interest, we would be more than happy to answer them. Hearing none, I'll hand it back to Pam.
So I think that was all we had planned to cover, and obviously if anyone has any questions, we're more than happy to answer those.
I just want to thank you for the great job that you guys do. It's always a pleasure to work with all of you.
Thank you.
Tim, I have a question for you. You have all the financial statements, and you probably would be able to tell, this question that came up at our last meeting. Can you tell what portion, what bills were paid? We had a question about the downtown area and who was paying the electric bill on that, for their lights. Would you have that information in your statements?
So that would be within the township's general ledger, so you could work through the clerk's.
Okay, I didn't know if you'd have
office
that,
to-
if you'd have the.
Not, I mean, it's not in that much detail within the statements.
Gotcha,
so,
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd also like to say that, you know, it's a shame that the rest of your team isn't here to be able to hear it, but, they did an awesome job. They monopolized that, space over there, for what seemed like
Couple
months.
of weeks.
They got here early, they left late, and
Yeah.
from a management perspective, you should be proud of the way that they handled themselves, because I could walk through there and try my best to interrupt them, and they wouldn't let me, so they did a great job. So.
That's because it's so hot in there, they were hurrying to get out.
No, this was in March, so it was still chilly.
So hot.
And as Pam pointed out, it is somewhat of an intrusion when we're taking up a whole room for 2 weeks and sitting at, you know, Amy and Karen's desks and everyone's for the whole day when they got regular work to get done. So to be helpful throughout the whole process and to help get through it is very much appreciated.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. There's standing ovation like the firefighter.
No, you have your party.
Not as important of a job, that's for sure. This is way more important.
You guys aren't leaving, are you? Please do.
We're gonna listen from the car, no?
I'm sure they're gonna watch the video later.
Yeah, you'll see yourselves on YouTube later, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item, pending business. Mr. King is here again tonight to probably sit through another meeting that doesn't give you a complete answer, but
What else is new?
I think you've been there before, haven't you? So, tonight's a deferral of requirements to build access road to Township engineering specifications and about land division on 893 North Hickory Ridge Road. So, there are some pictures up here that are images of Mr. King's property. Some of you may be able to see it. I'm gonna go to the paper version because it's easier to see what he's come up with. So, you see the dinosaur lake, as a lot of us call it. Mr. King's home currently is here. The road we're talking about, if you can see that little action over there, that's the entrance road, which is currently paved and 12 feet wide. The question is, more or less, Mr. King would like to divide the property. We asked him to come back with a site sketch to show his intentions and have it done by an engineer, which he has done, and that's where these documents came from. And so some of the things that come out of that site sketch is this, and it's changed a little bit from the previous images because when Mr. King asked the engineer to split his personal part, which is where the house is, to 25 acres, that original drawing came up short.
Yeah.
So he had to, and it follows along the edge of the lake there. So in order to modify that, these are the final drawings that he's come up with. And what it does is it requires the road to go approximately 2,000 feet, I think is what the total length, is that right, Beth?
Yeah, it ends up nearly half a mile.
So the current zoning, there's a couple of things involved here. One, at the last meeting, there was a question as to if you maintained the 12 foot, is that a requirement that's acceptable to the fire department in terms of a requirement that they have, and I believe the chief came back to me and said that it's 20 foot of clearance, not 20 foot of road bed. So, of course, it'd be nice to have 20 foot of road bed, but the object is to not try and over-invest in this parcel at that time and build it into a major road until at a later point when something might get split. So, one of the items that you'll see in there is this little nub right here is a turnout that we had talked about in the previous meeting, so that there'd be a place for vehicles to pass each other, and so that's one thing that's put in there. So from that point, it becomes a discussion item as to how we wanna progress on that. So, 1,300 feet's the limit of a private road in our current ordinance. How do we make this work? So this is going to be kind of a work session to get that figured out, so we know the fire department, it meets requirement of clearance on the existing roadway. If there's an additional road bed that gets put in there, it is designed to have a 60-foot radius for the turnaround, so that it meets the fire department's requirements for turnaround. And so we have to pick that discussion up there, what are we gonna do? So, Beth, you want to kind of step in here for a minute, help out?
Sure. As presented the sketch and asked to give you some feedback on it. There's a couple little pieces of information that's not available on the sketch, but that we have a kind of an understanding. One is the cross section of the private road that is, or the private driveway that exists right now. The 12-foot wide pavement with no ditches. The other thing would be what's the proposal for the extension beyond where the pavement is now. When we look at the ordinance, there's a few things that we would have to address. One being, do we want to look at allowing longer roads than this as a matter of general policy? Or is the policy solid and there's a good enough reason to let this road be longer than 1,300 feet? The reason behind the 1,300 feet road, in general, is that when you're developing a private road network or public road network, any kind of network, you don't want to be in a position where you're cutting off access to a large population if something happens to that single point of access. So you draw a limit, which 1,300 is a general practice out in the state of Michigan, where you at least have to provide an option for the future so that there can be some sort of interconnection so you can get around an obstacle. There's a second route. You can look at the development patterns here and say, well, where would that be? Is it all right to have X number of homes on the other side of a dead-end road that's longer than 1,300 feet? I mean, you can look at this either as specific to this site or just generally speaking. How many people is it all right to have on the end of a dead-end road, the other side of where an obstacle might be? You might look at this property and say, what's the real risk of the road getting cut off? It's not crossing a river, it's not going through a forest. What are the real risks of it ever getting cut off? There's lots of ways you can look at that. Another issue that you want to kind of kick around, either as applies specifically to this property or just in general, is the whole idea of, do private roads really have to be paved, and the road commission cross section? Right now the ordinance says if you have more than 4 homes you have to pave the road, but our experience in the township is that really has never really happened except when it's been a condominium development or a platted subdivision. So you can look at the history of what's happened around here and how the roads are being maintained, and the number 4, I can't find a number, a rationale for that number, 4 homes. Maybe the right number is 12 homes, maybe the right number is 50 homes. So it's kind of a matter of judgment. There's no literature out there that I could find that says if you cross this threshold, suddenly it's important to have the roads paved. And you've got a community that wants a rural character, maybe gravel roads fit into your image of what Highland Township should be. So that's another issue that you can discuss. The County Road Commission of, County Road Association of Michigan or something like that, CRAM, had an old standard of they wouldn't pave a county road till there's 50 homes on it, because above that it makes a cost, like a life cycle cost sense to pave it. Under that, it made more sense to just keep graveling and grading the road. You know, maybe you want to use logic like that. So you get these issues that kind of apply to this property, but apply everywhere else in the township too. So when we kick them around, we have to think we're not just talking about this piece, we're talking about every piece in the township. Lisa and I sat and tried to find examples of where we've required paving at above 4 parcels, and we could only come up with a couple. And they were actually at the ends of already paved roads. So, I can't tell you what the right number is. I don't know what the right number is, but it might be, I think it's probably more than 4. So that's another issue that comes into whether his proposal fits our community or not. If you look at any of these kinds of things, there's, the issue of our ordinance doesn't give us flexibility to deal with these on a case-by-case basis. We only have the ability to look at it as a community-wide issue basis, the way the ordinance is drafted right now. So, I spoke with Mr. Dovery, and he suggested some language that's for other communities to give you wider flexibility. That's another policy issue you can discuss, is whether you want to have that flexibility so that anything in the general code of ordinance is appealable to the board. Or, you know, in the past, I think the boards said they just assume that those kinds of appeals go to the courts if you couldn't live with the standards that we laid out. So you've got this bundle of issues surrounding private roads, some of which are just brought to light by the fact that Mr. King wants to do this, and then you've got Mr. King's proposal that's specific to this parcel. So we can deal with an ordinance amendment, and we have to come up with some sort of principles to move forward with evaluating his specific proposal and the idea of letting that driveway stand as it is. And in my memo, I identified 5 that came to my mind, and any one of those you could decide are important, but the threshold's wrong. Principle 1, you could decide that the existing driveway can stand as long as the turnouts are satisfactory to the fire chief. And that's one possibility. We do think, Ken and I kicked this around one day this week, we do think that we need at least some widening at that curve where it turns on a 90-degree curve. I mean, that's a decision the board could just say that's a principle we're willing to move forward with. The whole thing about the driveway approach, right now, it's extra wide for a residential driveway, but it's not quite up to the standards of a private road. And as delivery trucks and visitors come looking for a road, does that driveway to you, if you put a sign on it, does it say road to you, or does it still say driveway to you? Can a emergency vehicle, will they just drive past that road not thinking there's 4 homes down there? So that's another principle you can discuss. I think the road extension, you know, anything new should just comply with the standards. That's my personal opinion. We'll need some sort of maintenance agreement, and it has to specifically address the issues of keeping the road up to the fire chief's standards, you know, maintaining that clearance and that. And then my 5th point was that we're gonna need a development agreement, deed restrictions, something that tells them that once we get above a certain number of homes back there, maybe it's one more split, maybe it's anytime the lots get smaller than a certain size, that the existing 12-foot wide driveway no longer works, and you have to cross it. So we got two things, the ordinance to deal with, and then principles to move forward with Mr. King's on this specific proposal.
Lisa, you said something at the beginning about ditches. So can you go back to that again and explain that a little bit more about the need for ditches for that on the, if the road is put in that long, is that what you're saying?
You know, everybody thinks Highland's just got this really super granular soil and that you don't have to worry about drainage ditches. Until we see some engineering on anything, we don't know for sure where there needs to be ditches. But in general, if you don't start with ditches, you end up with the sides of the road up so high that the water runs down the road and it's not good for the life of the road. So the road commission standard calls for a crown road with a 2-foot ditch that gets, at least while the road cross section's fresh and new, it gets the water off the road, traveling down the ditches, and it stays off the roadbed, and it preserves the life of the road. So will they ever be full and carrying a lot of water? Maybe, maybe not, depends on how the topography is there. Is it important that they're there? I think it is. If you can look at roads up north, a lot of times just get cut through the roots of the trees, and then you get that wall, because every time they grade it, you know, the only place for the water is on the roadbed.
We have a lot of roads like that, Lone Tree Road, Fish Lake Road.
Yeah.
And when you drive down and you see the roots of the trees hanging there, there's no ability for that water to go anywhere. The roadbed degrades instantly when the water gets in there, because it goes into a saturation, and from cars driving on it too, it just pumps. So it does degrade the thing, and the ditches, the key to the ditch is that it keeps the bed dry and stops it from heaving in the wintertime and prolongs the life of the road, so.
If you drive around the township and you look at the existing dirt roads that are in here, you can almost tell which ones were built under the standards that we have in place today, and which ones might have existed as cow paths that became, you know, roads. The ones we have repeated trouble with are the old roads that just organically appeared. The ones that have been developed, say in the last 20 or 30 years, that have a ditch section, as long as the property owners are doing the maintenance on them, they look every bit as good or sometimes better than the paved roads that are in the condominium projects. We were looking just at a overhead aerial of the township, trying to pick out, okay, which roads that might or might not be private look like they're paved. A lot of them are gravel. They just look like a paved road from the air. And if you drive them, the ones, especially when somebody who lives on the road owns a grader or something, the property owners often do a good job. But the older roads that don't have maintenance agreements, that nobody takes care of, that weren't built to standards, that's what you're trying to avoid.
So I don't know, to a point that Beth brought up about the 1,300 feet. If you want the best examples of how where that's evident, is go to any of the cities, and they're all blocked out into lots, and then there's crossroads, and if you look at it, you'll see that the street address, the main road going past the houses, is 1,300 feet long, and every 1,300 foot there's a cross connector, and those are usually the side roads they call it. So what happens is if you have an emergency that's in the middle of the block or to one end of the block, you don't have an issue with the fire trucks or people getting to their own homes. They can go around and come back, and that's why that design standard's there. As you can see on this piece of property, what Beth was saying is, how would you make those connections? That's where the 1,300 feet may not have a true effect there. So, but if you divide that those acreages up into smaller parcels, acre and a half, now you're gonna be looking at that scenario. So that goes into the question about development agreement, which is something we talked about, because I wanna bring that up right now. The question was, and I think part of what we wanna try and have happen tonight, is to get some language from the property owner as to what you believe the development agreement might say in terms of how many lots you think would be required before an upgrade is made to the paved road. Or, you know, the last time we talked about that, I remember Mary McDonald had asked the question, you know, how many lots would you have and what would trigger that? So that is the question that we have to answer. If nobody splits this, is that an acceptable, and that's what the question is this split into 4 pieces acceptable the way you've requested? So how do we do that? We know it's more than 1,300 feet, so it doesn't meet one requirement. How do we deal with that? So that's the answers we're gonna have to come up with.
And the board may not wanna be at the position where the guy at the end wants to split it in 2, and so they come here and have to plead not to comply with the development agreement. You want whatever's there to make sense, in the long run, because it probably isn't gonna be Mr. King you would be dealing with when that threshold got triggered. It's gonna be somebody else who bought it with the property. So you wanna be forward thinking enough that, it's not just things, it doesn't just seem arbitrary.
Yes.
I thought we discussed doing that through deed restrictions.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't become a board issue. Somebody buying the property up front knows that if I try to divide this or split off a portion of it, it's gonna require me to build a county spec road, full paved county spec road. And
Not you, but the property owners.
right.
Yeah, that was discussed before.
Yeah.
But you may not want it to be just any division, because that's just gonna trigger somebody coming back and pleading, you know, to you again. You might wanna say any division under 5 acres, or any division under, to the acre and a half. You might wanna say any division that creates more than 8 lots. You might wanna fix on something like that, that looks like it's been well reasoned and is less open to every single incremental change being applied to you that, oh, but I'm only making this teeny little incremental change, why should I make that investment?
Well, one of the things we talked about is you could make a acreage requirement in a split that it really couldn't be done if you said it, you know, any split has to be of these parcels, and a deed restriction has to be over 20 acres. Well, there's no property there that's 40 acres in size. The buyer buys it understanding that deed restriction's on the property, and
it's enforceable.
Yeah. You know, certainly you could do it 15, but then, you know, there are 2 parcels that then would be able to be split in 2. And then you have to deal with what the requirements are gonna be to the next person that splits. Mr. King's proposal is that these sites would be, you know, country estate type home sites, with potential for, you know, horses, animals, things like that, and keep it that country feel. And I mean, that's certainly his desire, and that's why the plan was drawn this way. So it's, you know, it's got zoning that would allow 1.5 acre minimum lots if someone, you know, pushed through a proposal. And I think the properties, anyone that's been on it recognizes that property is far more desirable as 20-acre parcels with, you know, estate type homes than it is another subdivision. And, you know, at some point, and I don't wanna speak for Mr. King, but, you know, the reason we're doing this is selling it as one piece has been difficult, to say the least. And just by starting to promote the potential of some splits, we have had certainly more inquiries into the property, looking at parcels this size. So,
I think a question I'd have, Mr. King, is that, and this relates to the fact that there's that extension of that road. Somebody's gonna have to have a way that whoever buys that property, they can be able to get into it. And I think what Beth might have been inferring is that if the board said, we see that there's no reason to widen the paved component with the exception of a turnout or two, that would you be willing to do the county spec thing out and as a gravel road? Now, you know that property's got some pretty decent material. It might even be gravel spec already.
Be better gravel pit than a farm.
But that would be part of the question I think the board would ask is, what's to assure that there's a true path for somebody to get in there? You know, to buy those parcels. So how do we deal with that part? What's your proposal?
I guess there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it as a private driveway, which is what I've been looking at, because that's what it is, or you can look at it as a county spec road. I think if you only have 4 people on it, and you got a good gravel road in, there is no clearance issues right now.
Right.
There is an issue that might change on the depth or the length of that, because the guy that did the engineering drawing just drew a straight line down. That's why it's so weird looking, instead of following the lake around. And so that will shift back to the north. But
the circle, the turnaround will shift back.
Yeah.
So that might be shorter than what it's shown.
Yes.
Okay.
So until we get some activity, we're not gonna do anything. I mean, if somebody comes along and makes an offer on one of the pieces, then we've gotta sit down and gotta get it surveyed properly and whatever, and that'll change. But
Are you suggesting that he extends that with gravel?
Well, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, is that the case that you would
well,
do
that was a haul road at one time when Trips were running gravel trains out of there and his construction stuff. So it's hard. I mean, it's hard. You can't get a chisel plow through it, but it's all sand and gravel base anyway. So my thought was you just have somebody come in and just doze it, just a simple dozer job.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I was inferring, is that if you build it to the contours, and which in essence are most of the specifications, whether you're using 12 inches or 24 inches of county spec gravel, I don't know that as long as the thing is compacted and hard, whether that'd be a big problem at this point. But so I'm kind of trying to figure out, if you sell those parcels, how do those people get back there?
Well, you have to, at the point you sell one, you gotta punch in the extension.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
What's your proposal to do that? So this would be staged. You're recommending a staged approach to this in terms of, for now, you haven't sold anything. You're going to maintain your driveway. You sell the 37.99 acre parcel, which is the southwest corner over there. Then you're going to go out and you're going to put
any
an
of them,
access
Rick, any lot
Just
that
so
sells, any one of the 4 is gonna trigger a full survey. It has to be done, irons have gotta be set, and then we'll have something we can look at and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do. You know, we'll have it put to bed, and then at that point, the other thing is, I've already had Edison and Consumers out, and we're gonna run underground electric and gas all the way down to the end of the cul-de-sac. And so there won't be any, you don't have to worry, and there aren't any trees in the way to take lines, overhead lines or anything down anyways. So
Still looks nicer without the
yeah,
utility poles.
yeah, that's just the only way to go, really.
Right.
So I mean, that's an expense that I've got to set aside somebody comes in and buys the smallest piece, then yeah, I gotta get the extension put in, and then we gotta get electric and gas run and whatever. So I've already done a little bit of homework on that. And neither Edison or Consumers has an issue with it. So that can be done. And, you know, the goal is, my goal anyway, is we're still hoping to sell this as one piece. So, you know, but we've had, ever since we listed this with the MLS listings, we've had, what, 20 or 30 inquiries or
We've had
searches?
far more.
Yeah, compared to a year and a half of about 3
people, yeah.
So, I mean, and the monetary value, I mean, we've got it listed at $1,950,000 right now for 120 acres with a house and 2 barns. And if anybody was to come out and look at the house construction and the barns, it's, you know, I have a real difficult time, as Scott knows, dropping the price down. And what we've done with the house and the 25 acres and the 2 barns is we dropped that down to $995. Yeah, I mean, I just go nuts with that because I know what it cost me to build all of that in 1990, and but it is what it is. I mean, I'm at the point where I got to make something happen.
Well, I think there are buyers out there that would buy a smaller parcel and want an estate-sized home. I mean, I know that on Adeline, okay, there are people who have torn down houses and rebuilt very large homes just to be in the vicinity. So
yeah.
I don't think there's a shortage of people once they find that's available. Because there are people who still want space,
right?
And that kind of lifestyle.
Well, what I've got to do is, you know, I can't, you know, what if it's death? You got to wait until somebody is willing to write you a check,
Right.
and you have an agreement, and then I know that that's going to trigger a survey first, so you've got some definition, and then we've got to work on these other issues to get to a point where
Right.
the township is comfortable.
Mary, you had a question?
Yeah, Cleve, is that, your driveway now is paved,
Yes.
correct? Can it stay that way, or do you have to then redo it to a dirt road?
Okay,
We'd like to leave it that way.
Just, yeah, it doesn't
I
make
mean,
any
it's
sense.
12 feet wide. It's,
The
So,
proposal.
okay, so that's.
But anything new that goes, it's almost as long new on the survey drawing as it is existing.
Mhm.
If
So the
you-
question would be, do you build the new part to the standards? And then the other question comes up, how's the board feel about the paving? The paving question probably should be addressed by an ordinance change.
Mhm.
Goodness, should probably affect everywhere in the township.
Well, and
The
that's,
length thing,
and I
maybe
agree
not.
with that too, Beth, because I think whatever rules you have should apply to everybody. You can't make exceptions for this and then, you know, and this ordinance is gonna create all kinds of havoc for that, I think. I don't have an objection to having gravel roads, you know, when you buy a lot, you either know it's gravel or you know it's paved and you deal with it, you know. Living on both, I'll never live on another gravel road, but you know, that's everybody's choice. The concern I have with all of this is circumventing the rules about the paving and the water systems, and so if you split this into 4 parcels and each of those parcels go to 1.5 acres, then you have what would have been required to be a you know, community water system and sewer system and that kind of thing. That's what bothers me about doing this configuration. If they're 4 estate-sized lots, that's great, you know, I
Well,
think
that's how
that
you have,
preserves.
you have to deed restrict it,
You
so
just
it
said
can't
deed restricted.
go
Right. Or
against.
change the zoning back to 5 acres or 10 acres. 5-acre parcels would be perfect, you know, in a setting like that.
Yeah, but you don't wanna have somebody then can come in, if we change the zoning, you're asking somebody to come back and split that 24-acre piece
It's a deed
into 4
restricted.
pieces.
Not any more than it is 1.5 acres. You're not asking them to come in and make them 1.5 acre parcels, because that's what the zoning is
No,
now.
but
Well, I think
worst
what
case
happens-
scenario, in my opinion, right now, Mary, is somebody's gonna come along, Pine Bluff is almost built out, and a developer's gonna wanna, you know, make a reasonable offer on this property, and I'm not gonna have a lot of choices, and they're gonna wanna punch in 1.5 acre subdivision in there.
Well, and if
And
that's
that
what
would
happens.
really bother me, but.
Yeah.
Well, but that doesn't bother you, Mary, but it bothers our neighborhood, because one of the things we argued against is getting the road setting that we have. I mean, and we're
Right.
buddies, but we went through that a while back.
Well, I
So
remember that.
I'm happy with, if this could become deed restricted, that eliminates that problem, and we have.
If you deed restrict how many splits can go in there, yes, I agree.
He said if he deed restricts it, it's restricted to that parcel only. There is no further subdividing of that parcel. Is that what I understand?
Well, you've got two different ways you can do it. You can say you have no split when you buy it.
Yeah, you sell it and it's.
Well, there's a interesting component here. What actually happens is there's an event that would trigger an expensive project.
Right.
And that expensive project is that if you follow the road guidelines, right now what he's asking is, do I have to take out or widen a perfectly good access for a country estate for just a few homes? And if that seems to be okay, what would trigger the change? What would trigger it is somebody comes in and says, okay, the 32-acre one there, we want to divide that up into, if the deed restriction is that you divide it, you pay for the road. That's gonna make,
But divided into what? That's my
well, that's what we have to get an answer for. That'll be part of the, but the thing is, that triggers something that somebody's gonna go, ooh, that'll cost me some money.
Unless I
might not wanna do
misunderstood
that.
something, I thought was said that they would have deed restriction on those 4 pieces, that they cannot be subdivided.
That's not what he talked about
No,
last time.
Well, that's one option. The other option is you set a number of acres that makes it impossible to basically subdivide it or break it down into 1.5-acre lots. If you say 15-acre minimums, I think you've got questionable on 2 pieces. If you go 20 acres, you know,
Yeah.
the thing is you want, and I would want the same thing. If somebody were to come in and buy the 38 acre piece on the end and want to divide that and knowing ahead of time that he's gonna have to put in a county spec road all the way from the front gate on Hickory Ridge all the way down, I mean, you're talking $500,000, I don't think that's gonna be realistic. And so that is your negative input to doing something like that. So, you know, I don't know, Scott, what are your thoughts?
Well, the other, I mean, is it 4 parcels that can be on a private road? Is it 3? Or what is it in the ordinance?
You can, everything has to be on a private road or a public road. It's at 4, you have to pay.
4
4 parcels,
or more.
road needs to be paved, or
Currently.
period.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one thing that we might debate about changing in the ordinance, because I think that's something that's reasonable policy we might wanna read.
And I don't have a problem with that. We have gravel roads that have way more than 4 parcels on them,
Right,
and it's not an
right.
issue. Otisvig, I think it's, I don't know how many parcels on that road, but
And
it's
that's
a
an
long.
old road, but it's well maintained.
Right. So, you know, to me, that's not the issue. The problem I see is, like I said, circumventing the ordinance. Is this being marketed as 4 parcels then? Or are you
It's
putting
listed
in there?
both ways.
It's listed both ways, but all the listings show that
You can
that
split
it's,
it.
well, that it would be per approval of land divisions, splits, and township
Yeah.
approval. So, I mean, the language is, you know, we're saying that these can be available as long as the township approves
The
this.
splits.
So,
And
ultimately, that's why we're here, and we'll be here until we get it figured out. Ultimately, we can say we can sell them, but until we come to an agreement that satisfies the township and works so that this is a reasonable development and the costs are reasonable to Mr. King, you know, ultimately we can't do anything until we figure those things out.
Mary,
Well, I
I
don't
got a
think-
question about what you just said there, or asked him. I had a sense, when you said, how is it being marketed, were you assuming that it may be marketed as 1.5 acres?
Exactly.
See, and that's what I caught there, and I don't think you're hearing that. What they're saying is it's gonna be marketed as 1 parcel?
But it can be,
Or
it
4
can be
parcels.
divided. That's what he was saying, that it is marketed so that it can be divided. And so
Well,
If you're gonna,
right now, it's marketed as those 4 parcels
uh-huh,
and as a whole. So there are 5 listings,
okay.
one for each of those parcels on its
Alright.
own, and
But on
one
those
for the
5
entire property.
listings, it says the 4 separate ones, you're saying that they can be subdivided subject to the township's
They,
approval.
that parcel, 37.99 acres, is available pending township approval of this plan.
Of this plan, or,
Of this plan. I mean, the
Yeah.
only way the only way this parcel is being promoted
Okay.
is that it's a 37.99 acre estate,
okay,
country
Gotcha.
estate parcel.
okay.
Now,
So the object is-
I will say that when we listed originally the entire parcel, I absolutely made mention that, you know, the
It's
zoning
zoned.
allowed 1.5 acre parcels.
Mm-hmm,
So that language in that total listing hasn't changed.
mm-hmm.
But the individuals, you know, here's what we don't want. We don't want to sell someone a parcel, you know, a $400,000 parcel for an estate, and then the guy
next
next
guy-
door wants to build 10 houses.
Right, well, see, that's my
he
concern.
doesn't want to, he
Exactly.
doesn't want that going on next to him.
Exactly.
So that buyer is going to expect the deed restriction as a benefit to him and his property,
Mm-hmm.
because that won't allow that to happen next door. It's almost like homeowner association
Right,
restrictions.
right.
You know,
Well,
some
and
people
that's
see them
fine
as
with that.
bad. A lot of people see them as, hey, at least I know what my neighbor can and can't do.
And
And I
then the
think
other
the-
load to that, what happens is you put the deed restriction in there so that if any one of those lots decides they wanna go for that split, they're paying for that road. That's the part that really sets it up.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I guess therein lies the,
How do we do that?
what the township does to help support that, because if you change that you can have unlimited houses on a gravel road, now granted, it could be county spec required gravel road, but, you know, then what we see is the kind of roadblock is that once you split it past 4 pieces, you're gonna have to build a county spec paved road.
Yes.
You're gonna have between $500,000 and $1 million.
And if you put that as a caveat, then you're gonna have a big
Right.
hurdle for anybody.
So right now, the biggest issue is
I've
because
raised my
it's
hand
for,
a question.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm trying to get a question. Okay. Counselor, what is the definition of a deed restriction? If a property has deed restrictions set into that piece of property, is that forever? If you buy a piece of property that has a deed restriction that cannot be subdivided, it has to stay 32 acres, is that binding?
From a private perspective, yes, and I assume that's what they're talking about,
And
is
that's
putting
what-
private deed restrictions on the property. That does not necessarily have to be the only control, and I'd recommend that it not be. Whatever you end up doing, if you cut some slack and allow a road to go in that doesn't meet the current ordinance standards, whether that's by amending the ordinance or what have you, and you want to make sure that a road that meets the standards goes in when density gets to a certain level, we have to make sure that's a township enforcement matter as well.
On the different types of
But
agreements.
as the seller, if he says these 4 parcels would be available, and there's a deed restriction that says they cannot be subdivided, I'm not worried about the road right now. Is that something that is locked in?
Right, when under the Land Division Act, when someone sells property, they can grant or not grant the right to make divisions.
Okay.
And so, a simple way, and they can grant up to a number of divisions. And
So-
that's actually placed right in the warranty deed.
So in this case, these properties, get a road in, that language would be embedded in each one of those divisions.
Well, it could be if I'm understanding these gentlemen correctly in terms of what they're saying they intend to do.
Yeah. So that's what I think, is that, am I correct in saying that? Is that what your intent? If we would do this, you'd have language embedded in each one of those parcels, but it cannot be subdivided.
Well, the only option to that would be, if you gotta look at it from a prospective purchaser. Guy comes in and he builds one and decides, let's say he's got the 32-acre piece, and he wants to have his kids build a house next door or whatever, so he wants to split that into 2 pieces. Now, I look at that and say, that's more realistic down the line. Somebody's gonna come in and wanna carve off a chunk. So if we say that it can be split, but it has to be at least 20 acres, that prevents, well, I don't know.
Or you can
Each
control
piece.
it with land divisions, as
Right.
the
Yeah,
counselor was saying,
I think the
because
safest thing to do for everybody is to, let's find out what avenues we have of that. Let's get a language that works for both sides of the coin.
the restriction.
Because you don't wanna restrict the property so much that.
Nobody will buy it.
It goes on, we get it back as a tax sale, because somebody couldn't afford it anymore, and now we got the property back, because nobody else can afford it. You look forward to the future, these parcels of land are just they're gonna go up in price, they're not gonna come down. And, the only way that could make it come down is if you encumber a large piece of property with, something that makes it so it loses value. So you gotta be careful of that. So a deed restriction is an encumbrance that travels for life, and it may be better, and I'm just shooting in the dark here, to look at what the way the township could work with that. So, that's what we're trying to figure out is how, and I think that's the key here. And I'm asking this question, what do we need to do as a township to help this particular situation move forward? Is it acceptable? Is it unacceptable? I think it's kind of part of it. Do we have some things that cause issues? It's over 1,300 foot. What do we do to make that work if it's workable? And these are the kind of scenarios where Highland is not a land of cookie cutter things. So when you do ordinances that tend to be designed for cities, but you have 1,300 foot roads and side roads and water and all that stuff, you got cookie cutter versus reality. And reality in Highland is we don't have anything that seems to conform too smoothly. So what can we do to make that work? So where do we go? That's, we got our attorney here, Beth here. How do we help these guys get what they try to do?
I personally think at this point, we can't be the ones that are proposing the document on them. They need to propose something to us. Whether that be, do they decide to go with a minimum lot? We need a proposal and we need a land division application to deal with. A couple of things that we need to do to the ordinance to make it happen and put in writing, and we can discuss those. But there's the 2 pieces of it. There's what's the specific proposal for this parcel, and then what's the general policy that we need to put in place to be able to even react to their proposal.
So we don't have enough language. We're starting to get to that language, but this is my interpretation of where we're at. Beth is saying we need to ask you for something in writing that states we're going to have in a land division application, which changes, is different than what you're thinking about. If you sell it, now we better get our butt in gear and get a land division. Well, the land divisions can take 180 days. That, shouldn't, but it could. So now what does that do to your sale? So there's things like that we're going to have to work out. So
well, you can turn in a land division application, and as your ordinance stands right now, it should be denied.
Right.
Hands down. No debate, no discussion. Denied. It doesn't comply with your private road ordinance for paving and for road length, and maybe some others that I've not missed. I said in an email, the only thing that the board can give a relief from are the design standards, but you've got big issues here. I would encourage the board, appreciating that Mr. King has a dilemma, but look at that dilemma that's been presented to you as possibly a reason to take a look at your ordinance standards and whether they should be changed, without regard to his dilemma. Just, okay, we gotta understand there's at least one property owner that, this is adversely affecting him in terms of those two ordinance standards. And, Beth has put together some approaches to that. Where you can actually build into the ordinance, a way for, a standard to be disregarded or waived or modified. I pointed out to her a provision we put in the Waterford Code when we redid that a few years back, where it gives the Township Board general waiver and variance authority across the board on anything in the entire Township Ordinance Code. You've got that in your packet as well. I would favor tackling the issue at hand, the private road ordinance, and the two provisions, or as many as there are, that are presenting a problem here. Are those presenting a problem elsewhere, or are they likely to? And if so, how should we address it and try to deal with it in the private road ordinance and put it in a situation where then a land division application could be filed and could be approved. As I've sat here and listened, it doesn't sound to me as if there is a intention to even build a private road until he's got a buyer, and I'm not even sure that that's the way things are supposed to work. And it's also not clear how you can, if a buyer were to walk in and make an offer on one of these parcels to him tomorrow, I don't know how he could reasonably expect to close that deal. Because the township could not approve that division. It could not do it. He could not get the division that he would need to sell the piece.
And there's only one reason why. Ordinance.
Yes.
And the point is,
Well, I would.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right, so the ordinance
It sounds like
needs to
you're
be
trying to
amended.
jump up and help Mr. King. Yes, I am trying to help Mr. King. I try to help anybody in the community. The problem we have in Highland Township is ordinances that don't necessarily fit the community the way we think they should.
Right, so
And
that's
so
what
we have to look at that. And that's what you're saying. Let's look at them. Let's take them apart. Let's put them out there to be realistic about how these things get handled. We can't just keep going, the ordinance says no. If you can do that, but it has an effect on the community overall.
That's been outlined, at the last go-round, Beth's outlined it again. The constructive action that the board could take tonight would be to direct the preparation of amendments to the private road ordinance to be brought back to the board for considering an introduction at the next meeting.
Just to go over the proposed ordinance 457, you ready
That's what I'm saying
to
about
like
it.
see? I think it ended up after you on your desk.
And I agree with Mr. Dobry, and I'd be willing to make that motion, but I want those two separated out of this ordinance
Yes,
because they're
they-
completely different issues.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Two separate ordinance
Yes.
revisions, okay.
Yes.
But that's not what this says.
No, I know
Well,
that's,
put them together,
I
you
think
can
Beth was
separate
asked to
them.
put something together
That's
in
fine.
a hurry, and she told me that over the phone that she was going to do that.
Okay.
And I didn't have a chance to, yeah, they would definitely be two separate ordinances. If you went with the general appeal variance authority, you would do that separately. You don't have to do that too.
It could be done as two documents.
Yeah.
But, so you understand what, this is what I talked about.
Yes and no.
Okay, one of the things I mentioned to you was that we couldn't give you an answer tonight. And part of the process is that you've come to us to ask to do something that we have to say no on.
No, I understand
And
that
so,
part.
but that no, and you continuing to, be involved in it, is a thing that can crack open an opportunity to figure out, how can we make this, if this is the right thing to do, how can we make this work so that it doesn't make a whole bunch of other things go squirrely on us. So that's what we're gonna try and do. So it's cracking the ordinance and say, we need to address it, we need to look at it, what do we need to look at, how do we need to approach it, so.
Well, can I offer a suggestion?
Sure.
Because I've been in front of this township board many times, and I think we can all agree we have some issues with our ordinances. What I find amazing is that, and your counselor should be able to point in the right direction, you people need to have something in the ordinances that gives you the right, under special or special circumstances, whatever, to be able to grant variances as you see fit on each individual item, whether it's a horse item issue that we know we have issues with, or whether it's this particular issue. The board needs to have the authority to sit down and look at all that and make a decision. And I think if that can be worded properly into the ordinances, that would be a great benefit to the township, or to the board.
Right, that's kind of what you had said to us, is there are some things like zoning has different issues with that.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
Do you have what Beth provided to you?
yes,
So the first page,
You don't.
she's got it suggested as section 118. That is a general, across-the-board reservation of authority to the township board for any non-zoning ordinance to hear appeals if someone says the person administering this ordinance goofed up, and to grant variances if somebody comes in and shows that, and the standards are there. I mean, Beth didn't write those, she just, used those from the Waterford version. You could have different standards for granting variances. That is available, and that puts the board in a case-by-case situation for any non-zoning ordinance. I don't know how many cases you might find coming to you on your agenda if you put something like this on the books. That's the downside, where the board, instead of acting legislatively, making laws and ordinances, all of a sudden is being asked to be more like a zoning board of appeals, making discretionary decisions on a case-by-case individual property and property owner basis. That's a policy call for you. You may do it. It's a legal provision, I'm very comfortable with it, but I'm not putting it out there to suggest that you have to or you should. That is one way that relief could be made available for Mr. King's dilemma. The other way, and they're not mutually exclusive, is to actually amend the text of the given ordinance dealing with the standards that are causing a problem here, and maybe they're causing problems to others as well that haven't even come to see you because they've looked at the ordinance and said, I can't meet those standards, I don't have the money to do that, so I'm not even about it. I don't know if those people are out there or not, but that's the other approach, and you can go both routes, but they should be as separate ordinances.
Thank you.
so in essence, what we need to do as a board.
Is the document in front of us now something that we're gonna consider tonight?
No.
Okay.
But I think it's worth just touching on some key principles in here to see if they're even going in the direction you wanna go in. For instance, the private road standard, issues that came to light here, and I think do apply to other properties throughout the township. One is that maximum road length of the 1,300 feet, we could tie it to the number of houses served. I stuck in 8 here, the number might be different, you might say, 8's too many. But leave in there that when there's a practical or what appears to be possible future road connection, they at least have to provide a right-of-way so that it could be made in the future. That could deal with the 1,300 feet without having that variance authority that's on the front page. The pavement and road cross-section, we could change the threshold number, the number of homes that have to be where the paving kicks in. I stuck in 30, you might feel more comfortable with 20, 10, 8. You might not want a number of houses. That's something you could deal with. If you dealt with that, it takes away his concern about whether he'd have to pave if there was one more split there. And that has widespread application throughout the township. We've run into that again and again and again.
Another thing that I think has some general, application is what happens when a private road's extended?
Guess what?
When it's extended, do they have to bring the whole thing up to snuff or not? And, you know, maybe, as long as what they propose, whatever the practical alternative they propose to bring the whole road up to snuff is satisfactory to, emergency. You know, that fire trucks and police cars can get down there, maybe you're satisfied with that. That might, just changing those few things, plus leave the language in there that, you know, you can, or even change a little bit about the standards, the engineering standards variances. You might not need to pass that whole arching, section 1.18 that's on page 1.
Okay, a question.
Yes.
This is something we need to do, whether it's for this project or any project. Can we get together a special committee and get this done? You know, so that we can get it
Well,
done? What do we need to do to get this done?
I think that Beth would probably, and maybe Gary too, that probably really shouldn't be this board that makes the language. I mean, that's what the planning commission's for. Probably, would we send it back to the planning commission, or would we?
I do not believe your private road ordinance, Beth will correct me if I'm wrong, needs a recommendation from the planning commission for an amendment.
It's a general code ordinance.
Oh,
Generally for zoning only, so if you wanted to proceed with amendments of the private road ordinance, I would suggest a motion that would direct the planning director and township attorney to present proposed amendment to the private road ordinance for introduction at the next meeting, consistent with the planning director's draft circulated tonight.
We're just calling for a public hearing.
And I think Beth was looking, Joe, for direction from this board. How many lots are you talking, you know, do you wanna go from 4 to 30, do you wanna go from 4 to 5, you wanna go what? That's what she's asking, is direction from this board,
Yeah, we
and
can
how many.
plug those numbers
That's
in for you.
that's gonna, I think we need a special work session. I don't wanna be, you know, deciding all that tonight right here. I mean, I can't tell you. But I think we need to work on this quickly and get it done.
So what's gonna happen, so here's what needs to happen is, Beth has made some recommendations. I think one of the things you see in the ordinance as you go through them is there's these numbers that come kind of out of the air based on a guess, you know. 4 houses requires a paved road, where'd that come from? 100-foot setback for some, animals, where'd that come from? Kind of, you know, some of it's out of the air. So, and when you're required to make these decisions or put together the ordinance, you put together what may have been introduced in some other community. And so it may look like it would work, but you don't always know that. And so they go for the best that they can do in terms of covering as many avenues as possible. So I think what happens is if you start talking 20 homes or 40 homes, you're gonna have a dust storm on a gravel road.
Yeah.
And I have a 600-foot road that I'm on, and my wife can turn it into a dust storm, so, but she only does that twice a day. So when you start adding those multiple cars, that would be a reason why you would think how many would be realistic. But the other part is, when you say 4 homes or 8 homes, you've just encumbered them with an incredible financial requirement to pave a road.
Well, that's part of looking at this whole thing.
Right.
So I wanna look at the whole thing. Do we sit here and do it tonight? Or do we sit with Beth and an attorney to do it later? When are we gonna do it?
Suppose we could put
that's a good
together a
question.
committee to sit down and discuss that.
Okay, let's set that up and let's schedule it and let's get it done.
Well, why don't we have Beth kinda look at some other communities around here and get some rough numbers, you
Oh,
know?
where have you looked at the
This
communities?
is a result.
Well, then, if that's
And
the
the
result,
numbers
then.
match what we already have, basically.
Well,
So you'd be kind of
Yeah.
trailblazing
All right, so
to change the
don't need to
numbers.
trailblaze any longer. You've done some research on this, you've looked at it. let's tweak this document, and then we can all look at it one more time and then finalize it. Let's just finalize it.
Leave the numbers off. Make it variable, make it a decision of the board.
No, you need to have like.
Well, we can put
two
some,
standards.
finalities into it, but, let's finish this.
We need a motion to decide to take this ordinance up at the next meeting and decide if we wanna consider the ordinance to change the private road ordinance or an ordinance to allow for the board to consider variances.
Well, I think we ought to just address this private road thing first, for Mr. King's sake, and to get this straightened out. And if Beth can have a proposal at the next board meeting, we'll introduce it at the next, you don't have to have a motion to introduce it at the next board meeting. Whatever she prepares, we'll have before us. I still think we need to give her some direction on that number, you know, and maybe just throw numbers in and get some feedback. Do you want, you know, it is 4 right now, and that's part of the issue. Right. Do you want it to say 5, so, you know, he can have his 4 parcels, that 5th one will trigger somebody to have to put that road in? Or do you want to make it 8, or the 30 that she's got in here? That's what we, as a board, have to give her some feedback tonight.
Well, I just thought we were gonna put a committee together to resolve all that. Did we just say that?
Well, here's what happens.
But it's gotta go to the board anyway.
Well, I know, but the committee's gotta put that thought together.
I provided some language that Judy moved.
I did move.
I can't repeat it verbatim, but it was to the effect of have the township attorney and planning director bring back to you at your next meeting a proposed private road ordinance amendment consistent with what's been presented tonight. That can be done with blanks for the variables. At that meeting, when it's scheduled for introduction, you can, as part of your motion, fill in those blanks. And I move to introduce the ordinance as presented with the blanks in paragraph A to B, X. It's my opinion that if you do that, even though the ordinance wasn't complete as written, the motion can make it complete and it can be introduced. If you were to do that, that would not be incompatible with a committee of board members and you know, staff, whatever, to sit down and try to hash through what those numbers should be. If you wanted to move it along expeditiously, that would be one option.
There was a comment made that it looks like this Township Board Reserve Appeal and Variance Authority, is that something we?
That's a different thing.
Okay. But that also would take care of those issues about filling in the blanks.
But that's a separate ordinance.
I understand, but that would also give us the opportunity to fill in blanks. Okay.
Yeah, that part of that ordinance is, I mean, you know, you should look at that to see if you're even comfortable with opening up that kind of a procedure available across the board, or not. I mean, it could be applied in this situation, it could be applied in any other non-zoning ordinance in the township, so I don't know, you know, careful what you wish for.
Was the motion that Judy said to move for, was that just to look at the private road ordinance? Was it also to look at the?
Only the private road ordinance.
Private road ordinance, okay.
So you have, let's repeat your motion, please.
Well, he made it and then she did.
Missy, you're up.
Well, I have it on here.
Okay.
Yeah, because he
Here,
kinda
again,
went
it's-
away with it.
Okay,
It's a
we're,
motion to direct the township attorney and planning director to prepare a private road ordinance amendment for possible introduction at the next meeting, consistent with the draft prepared by the planning director at this evening's meeting, with the variables on road length and pavement to be determined at that meeting.
So Judy
So
made that
moved.
motion. Judy already made it.
I moved.
I mean, again, it's not exactly the way I said it before, but the concept's there.
Brian supported it.
Well,
okay, moved.
oh, I see.
So I moved, and we were looking for support, so.
Support.
Who support? Okay.
I did. Let's move on here.
Alright, anyways,
Okay, we discussed the hell out of it, so let's, vote on it.
alright. Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
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 motion carries.
is there?
And if I may, I just did not have a full opportunity to go over what Beth presented, look at it, see if I had anything to add, chip in on it, so I apologize for that. Now, Mr. Salvia, if you wanna have a committee to talk about those variables between now and the next meeting,
Yeah, I don't
that
wanna-
could be that could be the subject of a second motion.
All right, I would advocate I would make the motion that we have a committee to review the output from Beth and Gary, so that we can look at it before the meeting, okay? I don't wanna wait till the meeting to talk about it, okay? We need to talk about it so we can have some input, so we have a final resolution, rather than discussing it all over again.
And who will be on this committee?
I'll be on the committee.
I'll be on the committee.
One more is allowed.
I'll be on the committee.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Mary.
Support.
Okay,
Moved and supported. Vote please.
I vote yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 the missing factor in the
Motion
committee
carries.
would be, when will we get this document finished?
Before the next board meeting.
Well, I know that, I mean, I would hope that, but if it's 1 day or 1 hour before the board meeting, that doesn't give us much time to look at it.
Beth's done the heavy lifting
It's
already.
mostly done.
I read through that, it's very good, I see a lot of good things, so, a couple weeks, a week,
In time for the board packet?
okay,
Just probably have it next week.
okay.
You know.
Just call when it's ready, then we'll convene the committee, okay? That's, I wanna get it reviewed before we get the chief.
Okay,
Fair, say
the
that.
other item, about the board's ability, what quote could be a second motion, on the board's ability to have, I don't have the terminology in front of me because I gave it away.
Appeals?
Appeals, the board having the ability to have appeals.
We're drafting, Ken to be on that committee as well. Could we draft Ken to be on that committee as well?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Ken.
Welcome, Ken.
All right,
So, the language that we would need for a motion to do that would be, I gave away my stuff,
Oh, so if,
relating to the Waterford Township.
so in that case, if you were wanting to move that along, the motion would be to have an ordinance prepared for possible introduction at the next meeting, consistent with, section 1-18 of the draft ordinance 457 provided by the planning director at this evening's meeting. It will simply allow it to be, that's not, that ends there, but it'll get put in separate standalone ordinance form.
Okay, did you get that, Misty?
Yes, so you're saying this is a second motion in addition to, it's not in addition to the first motion.
Right, this is a motion.
This is the third motion, actually.
A third motion, common so.
Right,
Okay.
and it's dealing with page 1 of this.
And his motion is dealing just with page 2, with the, not the entire thing, but the private road.
Section 1, this is 18.
So I would say so moved, if you can repeat that one more time, so that, okay, you ready there, Misty?
Yeah.
So a motion to have an ordinance amendment consistent with section 118 of the draft ordinance provided by the planning director, prepared for possible introduction at the next meeting.
So moved. Okay,
Support?
all right, moved and supported. Vote.
Okay. Mr. Salvia?
Yes?
No.
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
And I would just encourage the board particularly to look at the variance standards in that, because that's not etched in stone. I mean, they can be whatever the Highland board wants them to be, if you want them at all.
Okay. Where are we now?
We can start new business.
Tabling.
What's that?
Tabling.
All right, new business.
I got a couple more questions.
Yes.
Your attorney's gone?
No, he was my broker.
Oh, you both, okay. I want to reaffirm the fact that it's my clear understanding that the goal is to either sell the entire thing or 4 parcels. And
Correct.
the 4 parcels would be deed restricted, so if I came to buy the 37 acres, it clearly states on that purchase agreement,
Right.
a warranty deed that buying that 37 acres, that's forever gonna be 37 acres. That's gotta be, that's what my understanding is. Is that?
Well, either that or it'll be restricted to a minimum lot size that basically prevents
Well, okay.
subdivision of it.
Yeah.
And if it were anything more than that, the language should state that they would have to suffer the cost of building a county spec paved road.
Okay, so I guess that language would be important to bring with you then, if you have.
Right, no, I already told Scott to start working on it.
Because that, without that, I'm looking at 4 pieces, and I'm happy with 4 pieces, I mean, subject to the road and all that, but if 4 pieces could turn into 30 or 40, then I'm.
Yeah, we wanna prevent that.
Okay, all right.
I
just
just
wanna
wanna
make
make
sure
sure with that.
we're very clear on that, okay?
It's just, there's different ways to do it, Joe, and
Yeah,
that's,
okay.
That's what we're trying to establish, what's a clear way that we can help with this process, but at the same time, make sure that we're not like stepping all over and making a mess out of everything.
All right.
right.
All right, so, thank you, Mr. King, appreciate it, we're moving on to the next step in that process. Stay
Whatever, at
tuned.
least we can laugh about it, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you very much. Okay, new business, award bid for cable installation services. In the budget, we had, put, an allocation in there to recable the building, to update all of the network cabling, the stuff that we have is, antique. It has given us a little bit of trouble in that it restricts some of the bandwidth, that we appear to need. Everybody says we'll never need any more bandwidth, but every time you turn around, that's a lie. So, what we did is we, sent the, we sent we advertised and 23, requests for proposal were also sent out directly to vendors on March 2017 for the cabling upgrade. And we only received 5 letters of intent and 3 bids. And I'd like to make the motion that we approve the lowest bid, which is Datacom Group Inc. out of Holt, Michigan, for the amount of $17,970 to do the cable upgrade. Do we have support for Judy?
Question?
Any questions?
Yes, do we, I'm not sure about it, do you get any references or anything on these people that, I mean, this is really an important job, and
Yeah,
do you know anything about them?
We had our IT company, Raycon, actually reviewed each one of the people that we had actually delivered them to, as well as these 3. And has worked with all 3 of them, and said that any of the 3 would be
Great,
capable of doing the job.
thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Vote please.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
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 Aye. Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Alright, next item. This relates to your question. The activity center assistant is a position that we had in the past. It's a 20-hour position. They basically are there to help the director and the assistant director, I guess you call it, perform the duties in managing the activity center. What had happened is our second individual, if you remember back a little bit, decided to move to Oregon, and so we had to replace her position. So we moved the assistant. After looking at the situation, we moved the assistant to that position, which is full-time. Now we've been running without this individual, and there's a lot of activity going on, and there's definitely a need for that assistance. So director of the activity center has put out call after call after call, request for people to please look at this position and help us out. And the response is always not enough pay. It's $10 an hour is what it's listed at, and we're just not getting any takers.
Have we run ads in the paper for that?
I think Highland, yeah, we did do it. Yeah. We sent it out and got no response.
I think she's doing online listings a lot too.
So she's been continuously putting this out there. So the net result is, if we can't get anybody at $10 an hour, it seems realistic to request that maybe the recommendation is to bump it to $12 an hour for 20 hours a week, and that's what the request is. So, anybody want to make a motion to do so, or?
My question was, what's the job description to require a 20% increase? Why didn't you start with 10?
We did start with
Did
10, got
start with
nothing.
$10, $12.
Increase.
We're talking $12 an hour, then.
That's not the point.
It is the point. $12 an hour. We're making 10 at McDonald's. We have a lot higher responsibility.
Minimum wage for the state and federal.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
And the job description is for that job?
Activity assistant, whatever's asked of you. There's afternoons, there's
Job
evenings.
description. Okay.
That's your opinion, thank you very much. So, anybody want to make a motion? All right, I'll make the motion to approve the increase from $10 per hour for 20 hours per week to $12 per hour for up to 20 hours per week.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported, vote please.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
No. Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Next item is D, resolution to authorize placement of signage on M59 median for Highland Road.
LEDs.
Let's see. Check. Okay, see, LEDs. All right, at the last meeting, there was a question about electrical, paying electrical, so on and so forth, and I said I was gonna postpone it to this meeting. What is in your packet is a copy with the green paper on it. This Woodward Energy Solutions was a company that assisted us in relighting the boulevard, the 47 historical lights. Some are located at the library, the boulevard out here in front of the police station. And what they did is that they offered to sell us the LED bulbs at the lowest price that I've ever been able to find. It allowed us to, if we were to do the upfit or replace the bulbs that had burned out, which every one of them burned out from improper application, they would have been $400 per light. This company allowed me to physically go out there and replace those light bulbs at a cost of $2,115. So we saved $16,685 with the assistance that we got, and so that's a significant amount of money. We also reduced the output of the light bulbs, which significantly cuts the cost between LEDs in terms of monthly expenditure as well. So I asked Woodward Energy Solutions if they could look at the upfitting the lights in the DDA district, which are currently using a metal halide bulb, which is fairly expensive to operate, and what kind of a proposal that they could give us on doing that change. The difference here is that the street lights, the 47 street lights that they helped us with before, had already been converted to accept an LED, so the wiring in that had been done in advance. It was just a matter of screwing in a light bulb and climbing up there to do it as well. So the net response is that in these, they actually have to disable the ballast that's inside the head of the light, so it means they actually have to dismantle the light up above, rewire it, and then install the new bulbs which fit into the same socket that's there, so they don't have to physically modify the lights other than doing the electrical stuff. But it means that they'll have to go up to each light, disassemble it, repair it, put it back together, so there's some significant time involved in that. So the results were, if you want to look on page, what they did is they did an analysis that shows expected returns from switching to LEDs. Those lights alone, yearly energy savings would be $1,097.4. So that's a 54% return on investment, payback period of 1.84 years. You save 77% energy by going to the LED bulb. So the net result is that the cost of this project would be $4,049. There's a utility rebate of $270, so the effective cost, which they would take care of for us, or we'll get that one way or the other. So the effective cost to the customer, which would be us, is $3,779.44. So what that averages out to over a 10-year period, if we continue to light these lights with the bulbs that are in there. In energy savings, we'll save $17,089. In maintenance savings, $7,453, for a total savings of $24,543 over a 10-year period by converting to LEDs. So it makes sense, and I'll make a statement of this one, regardless of who pays for it, to make sure that this project gets handled and handled sooner than later, because it's a waste of money to keep these things lit at the higher level when you have an opportunity to be able to move this forward.
Did you say you don't care who's gonna pay for this?
No, I said it's not relevant as to who pays for it. It's that you're saving the money. It's still
But who will be
gonna cost
paying
money.
for it though?
Pardon me?
Then who will be paying for it?
The
though?
taxpayers pay for it.
The downtown lights?
Yeah, regardless.
Okay, so it comes out of your budget then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The DDA budget, you're saying?
Yeah.
No, it comes out of our budget.
No, it should come out of DDA, but you pay your.
The DEA doesn't own those lights.
You know though, Rick, I went back and I looked on some notes here, and I don't mean to argue or disrespect you or anything, but when that accident happened out there on 59, and I really was upset about that, and you had told me that, well, one way we could get those lights on all the time, or whatever it was to tax the business owners, because the DDA pays for their own lights.
At that time they did.
Okay, so when did that change that that the DDA is not paying for it?
I think it was actually November of last year, sometime in there. Because what we did is I made a decision. I have the right to do that by board policy, to determine how the utilities are going to be dispersed. And so I made a decision that the money that the DDA was expected to pay for those lights, which was never determined by this board or any other board, that it would be the responsibility of the DDA. Those lights belong to the township. We are paying for lights that are in the DDA district that are on the boulevard.
Well, that's all fine.
So,
That's fine. And
the other component of it is the DDA has a lifespan. What happens after that? The best thing is take care of it now. Then the expectation of what they're going to cost, by the time you do this upfit, you're going to have about a $40 electric bill versus $186.
well, that's fine. It just
So
seems
the
to
point
me
is,
changing the budget around, that would be something that we would have known.
who would have known?
That the township, the people would know that you would have had and reallocated that. I just was surprised. I was sorry.
There's a lot of things you probably might be surprised at. I don't know.
Sure.
But in any event, that's the decision that was made. So moving forward, if somebody doesn't want to make the motion, then and I will say another thing, that this is a $4,000 project. I was not I did not send this out to have 5 other people or put it out to bid, to have a whole bunch of people come in and say, how much could you do this for? I felt that the decision was one that, once again, under the board policy, under utilities, I could make that decision myself. I chose not to do that. I chose to bring it to the board and say, here's a good opportunity, this is something we should look at, it's wise spending.
Absolutely.
Looking at what I've already saved the township in the other project that I was involved in, it's buried, it's gone, it's a cheap thing to do. So we could have paid somebody $400 a light to come out, put the same stupid light in there, put the same cover back on and have them all burn out. Instead, we didn't. We made the right decision to change that.
As a building owner, I'm building in a 5-building association, I had the same issue with the other types of bulbs with ballast, and they were rusting, and the lighting guy came out and said, well, look, you know, it's gonna cost a lot of money to replace all this, I can put all LEDs in, and a simple wiring, and we saved a lot of money, and our electric bill went down substantially. So I believe in, you know, there's an initial upfront cost possibly, but it's the right thing to do, because it is the direction. So it's, especially maintenance, you know, you gotta go back out there.
I'm just surprised that that it got switched over, that's all. I mean, now as far as saving the money, you can't turn that down. I just didn't know it was shifted.
No, the concept is if you're looking long-term and you have a DDA that has a lifespan, then now what do you do? Their tax, it's still, what happens is, to simplify it if I can, the way that DDA district works is, those lights cost nobody any additional tax dollars. And that's the part that we just cannot get across to the public. You paid nothing towards those. So what happens is, the tax capture is really something that tax capture stays on the properties that are allocated to the district, the DDA district. Then 56% of that money never went to Oakland County. So Highland Township benefited by having a project of over $1 million, of which more than half was a gift back from the county.
And money you would not have seen in this area.
And where did that money get spent? Where does that money go to? To the
downtown district. It has to stay in the DDA district. But the object is you make improvements to the DDA district. Those improvements then reflect on the rest of the community. The property values rise. Then the property values as a whole rise, then everybody benefits. The police will get their share that they gave up back, the fire gets their share back, the library gets their share back. So that's the rationale behind it. It's a very misunderstood taxing authority, and it has tremendous value. But it also has had some issues where people have abused it. Highland has not abused it. Our DDA has been extremely responsive. So on that note,
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion the board accept the proposal from Woodward Energy Solutions to upgrade the 27 street lights in the Highland Station District for the amount of $4,049.44.
Support.
Okay,
I
move
thought
to
it was
support.
3,700.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
37,744.
Yeah, what is should we do this first and then get our?
That's after the rebate, right?
If I may,
He said that was the final
if the
cost.
motion is made as presented, I looked at the contract and it agrees that the rebate will come back to the township, so you don't need to amend the motion. The contract that is in your packet
Right, it comes
commits the rebate back to the township.
Okay, so we have to spend the $4,049.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying, Rick?
Yeah, I
Okay.
understand.
Okay, I should ask for discussion, I'm sorry.
I do want to discuss this.
Who supported first?
I
Joe.
support.
Okay, thank you.
I have a problem with awarding contracts like this without going out for bid, Rick. And I know you know these people and, you know, they did you favors before, but that's not a reason to issue contracts to anybody specific. And it just makes it cleaner when the township gets other quotes. And maybe this guy would come in the cheapest anyway. You know, there's reasons for those requirements for government to send bids out. So that's one issue. The other issue is, where's the money being paid from? You know, this was a DDA project. The township didn't ask for those lights to be put in. When this whole thing came up, you know, and all the lighting projects that Mrs. Hansford
did that survey for, you were ready to send everybody who wanted a neighborhood light a separate SAD to pay for their own lights. So why should the township now pay for lights in a DDA district when it was only to benefit that DDA district? So I don't know where this money is earmarked from, but it should be from the DDA funds and not general fund. And the third issue is, because it affects the DDA and you personally, I think you should abstain from voting on it.
Question.
That's your opinion, thank you.
Question on the lights, I thought I heard that it wasn't just the DDA lights, these are all, is it just, it's the library ones?
No, this is just the DDA.
No, the library ones were before.
So this is just the DDA lights that we're
Right.
talking here.
This one here. Talking about that, there's no library stuff that was fixed.
Okay, any other comment?
I have questions now.
Yes.
Because I don't know anything about the DDA lighting project. When did it happen?
2014.
It was part of the sidewalk project.
Okay, and as part of the DDA's putting that project through and doing it, was there any element of that about the cost of the lighting itself?
Absolutely not. There was discussion, but never any decision.
That was never part of the project cost?
Yes, it was part of the project cost. The lighting
The
was part of
lighting,
the
but not the
streetscape
electrical.
project.
No, what I mean is the
Yes.
cost to run the lights. The electrical was or was not part of the project? I mean,
Was not part of the project.
okay. So then you said, Rick, I think this, in November of 2016, you determined to shift the payment responsibility for the electrical costs from the DDA
Right,
to the township.
right.
Okay, and was that change reflected in the 2017 township budgets?
It's under
No.
electrical and it's under maintenance.
I
And
mean,
let me
if
explain,
I were to look-
I'll explain to you what happened.
No, let me just finish the question. If I were to look at the 2016 budget and look at the 2017 budget, would I see some nominal change in DDA expenses for electrical and some nominal increase in township costs for electrical utilities?
The budget was
Probably not.
approved before that decision was made, without it in it.
Well, let me explain about the payment of electricity. When the lights burned out, the first batch that we told you about, the 47, they're all burned out. I spent a year trying to find what is the right way to address these things. And I mean continuously looking at the internet, talking to lighting contractors, trying to find out how can we make this thing happen without spending $400 a bulb. You know, $20,000 to put light bulbs in. That's really foolish. So what came out of that was, after a year had gone by, I go, great, I can find out exactly how much those LEDs cost us. So I went to our bookkeeper and I said, I'd like the readout of the meters, you know, the electrical for the lights that go to the library. We don't have that. I said, why not? Because we don't break anything out. And I said, that's the wrong way to be doing this. We need to break every single electric meter out. So that if anybody asks, what's that cost? You can go to that. That's when I found out that our clerk had made the decision to charge the DDA for the electricity. That came in as a bill. That bill was then, oh, that's DDA, pushed over. There was no decision on anybody else's part. The expenditure component of that belongs in my office, not in the clerk's office. So what I'm getting at is, the decision wasn't made by me to put it on the DDA. It was made by another individual who's claiming to not want it in our house. So it belongs to the township as a whole because they are for the benefit of the whole community. It benefits everybody that drives by there. It should be paid for that way. That's the way we're doing all the lights now. Why are we dividing out 27 lights?
So, did DTE ever bill the DDA for the lights? Or did they
There's
bill
a
the
meter
town?
on it.
Was that?
There's a meter.
No, but whose name are the bills in from DTE? Do they separately bill for these 27 lights?
It's Highland Township.
So they bill Highland Township?
Yes, and then it's back charged to the DDA.
I believe it says DDA on the bill.
The DDA is not, the entity is.
So when these, and I apologize, but I don't know anything about the project, and it sounds like you have an issue. So, once the lights are all in, the township's bills go up by a certain amount because we're running more lights, right?
Right.
And if I'm understanding correctly, the township board never made any decision as to who should pay for that electrical cost for those lights.
Nope, that decision was never made.
Okay. So what we have is a clerk that thought it should be the DDA, and then a supervisor that more recently thought it should be a township function.
Yep.
Is that a fair
It's pretty close.
spin? Okay. Mary, you said that the change Rick did was after the 2017 budget was approved by the township board? Okay.
So, here's the electric bill for 100 North Milford Road. That's the lights. It's Highland Township. It's not DDA. And that's my point. It's a Highland Township expenditure. I mean, we can play all kinds of games trying to move money over here and say, you owe us this,
Well,
you
no,
owe us
but to me,
that.
it's no different than when we get the bill for the substation or the fire stations, those get billed to those entities.
And that was a decision the board made. The board didn't make that decision.
No, they didn't.
So,
It was
anyways,
no different than this.
to not waste any more time, I'm gonna make the motion that what we do is the township pay
We
for
still
the,
have this other motion on the table.
okay, we're still in discussion on that?
Yeah.
Let's have a vote.
Okay.
So any other further
This
discussion?
motion was to approve this, project to replace the lights as proposed. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, we ready to vote? Mrs. Chenoweth?
No.
What's the motion again?
To approve the replacement of the lights to LEDs as proposed.
For cost savings.
I'm gonna vote yes, just because it makes good monetary sense to do that.
I will also.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, I'm gonna make the next motion is that in consideration of the fact that the 27 lights, or let's just say the DDA district lighting is an asset to the township as a whole, that the township general government and general fund shall pay for the electricity for those lights.
What is the electric bill?
It's $186.
With the old lights? With the old lights, right? The
current ones.
So 186 a month?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the savings is roughly
77%.
77%.
Okay.
Says,
It'll be 23% of that.
151 is the monthly, the proposed lighting would be $35. Maintenance is $55, maintenance goes to $0, so.
That'd be $42.78 a month.
Right. Okay, we have a motion. Somebody support?
Did you support that, Brian?
He,
Anybody support that?
Support.
Brandon. Okay.
Okay, moved and supported. Vote please.
All right, Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Oh, 90.
Well, still not 10 o'clock yet.
I'm gonna try to get through the next two.
Okay, the next one, resolution 1708 to authorize placement of signage on M59. Median for Highland Red, White, and Blues Festival. There was one error in the image that was sent out, and it showed Livingston Road by the viaduct, and it means Milford Road.
And it will be corrected.
That'll be corrected, so.
Oh, yeah.
I would move to approve resolution number 1708 to authorize placement of signage on M59 median for Highland Red, White, and Blues Festival.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Vote please.
I vote yes.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, next item, resolution to approve participation in the community development grant program. These are usually 3-year programs, and it's a requirement that we pass this resolution in order to be participants in it. The CDBG money is used for the bus, it's used for the repairs like the door and this entranceway here to make it ADA compliant. So there's a lot of applications. It's been very beneficial to the community, and it would be remiss to not pass it. So
I would move to approve resolution 17-09 to approve participation in the 2018 through 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program.
Support.
all right, with one correction. There's an error in there that says 2018 and then it repeats 2018. It should be 2019 in the actual resolution 2020.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the
Yeah.
titles right. Okay,
The title's right.
thank you.
All right.
So with corrections?
Yes.
Okay. All right, vote please.
Mr. Savia?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right, next item, list of bills.
Did everybody receive their add-ons in the email?
Yeah, thank you.
I would move to approve the list of bills as presented with the additions.
Support.
Moved and supported. Vote please.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
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 Motion carries.
All right, so now we need a motion to go into closed session.
I would move to go into closed session to consider confidential attorney-client privilege correspondence regarding 201 Lone Tree property.
Support. Moved and supported. Vote please.
All right. Mr. Howe?
Yes.
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 I said yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Break time, everybody run to the bathroom.
I'm not there with the areas.
You have a more comfortable chair there.
All right,
Back on the record.
back on the record.
Board, I provided you with a document titled Offer to Purchase Property for the 201 Lone Tree property. It is an offer to purchase that I understand will be signed and submitted to the township for possible acceptance. The buyer's name is Benedetto DePonio on behalf of an entity to be formed. If you are inclined to approve that document, you could do that with a motion that would approve the offer to purchase property and its attached option to repurchase property presented by the township attorney, and authorize the supervisor to accept that offer upon it being signed and submitted to the township by the buyer.
So moved.
Support.
Did you get all that?
Hey, Jed. I'll be honest with you. I'm running out of energy. I need to be plugged in.
All right, so, moved and supported. Vote?
Mrs. Chenoweth?
Yes.
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 Motion carried.
Okay. Now this next item, C, consider initiation of zoning ordinance text amendments. Beth and I kind of both went, where are we going with that? So, Gary, you got any recollection of why we got to that point of that? Was this for the 201 property?
This is the PUD.
It's not only for the 201 property, but in discussions with the buyer of the 201 property, and as I indicated in my letter, just over the course of becoming more familiar with your zoning ordinance, it doesn't have flexibility that I've seen in some other community zoning ordinances. I'm talking about many zoning ordinances simply don't recognize all the different types of uses or mixed uses that a property owner may want to proceed with. And currently, the only thing our ordinance does is in one section, if somebody comes in with a use that's not listed in any ordinance in any place, then the zoning administrator can try to make a call and ask the ZBA for help in doing that. And that's kind of the only thing we got going. We don't have a PUD tax. Land unit developments are pretty common, at least provided for in most communities, where it allows for mixed uses, allows for a community, regardless of the underlying zoning, to approve a specific proposal and concept for a property. And there's different ways to do that. I mean, you can actually rezone property to PUD and then approve a specific concept and plan, or we leave the zoning there, but you can approve a concept and plan that's legal even though it might not be spelled out as a permitted use or a permitted special approval use. That's one way you can provide flexibility. Excuse me, please. I've seen other communities that will have a provision in each zoning district, or even some of the zoning districts, where it might say as a final listed special approval use, other uses determined by the planning commission to be similar to the above uses, similar in characteristics. It can vary. Those kind of provisions are allowing somebody to come in and make a case to the entity that they need to get approval from, the planning commission, that what they've got in mind is close enough to what's allowed in that district that even though it's not specifically listed, it should be eligible for consideration. There are other approaches as well, but that's what the essence of this letter was I pointed out that the board itself can initiate zoning ordinance text amendments, and the way you would do that is you would, with a motion, provide some guidance in terms of an ordinance text amendment you would like to see developed, and then refer to the planning commission to hold a public hearing on it and make a recommendation on it. So this is in the zoning ordinance context now. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier in the non-zoning ordinance context, where at least in the private road ordinance, there's no flexibility there either. So that's what this was about. It was to get something on your agenda so you could talk about it. You don't have to do anything on this tonight. You can answer questions if you have them. If you wanted to see some type of greater flexibility put into the zoning ordinance, then you would want to do it providing some basic direction to staff in my office if you want to be involved in the kind of ordinance you would like to see put together. And
I think this is a suggestion. This would help in this particular scenario, because what happens is there's other parcels of property where one of the suggested uses of the 201 property was for a sports facility. It's not allowable in a multiple zone. So this would be but it is allowable in other zonings that have vacant land, and so it's one of those questions why it's just the way it got written. Right? Wasn't intended to stop it from happening. It just wasn't written in there as an allowable use.
That was the one that brought it to the forefront.
Right. So I think in this case, what we probably should do is sit down with Beth and talk that one through a little more, get some details, disseminate that information to the board, and bring that up at another meeting next week.
That would be very appropriate. This was to get it on the board's radar, if you wanted to look into it.
I'm not even sure it needs to go on the board's discussion table right now. The planning commission's taking up technical amendments, the tax amendments right now. I think just suggesting to them it's an issue we should explore. We'll just explore it.
But the thing is initiating something anyways.
I
Whether
don't
we
think
do
we
it by
need a board
motion or.
directive to explore that, but I think they'll be open to explore.
Anybody have any comments you'd like to make on that? So I think what we'll do is let's go ahead and you and I can have some more discussion about it, but we'll put it in front of the planning commissions, because I think it's something we're not opening up any Pandora's box necessarily with this particular thing, and it's something other communities do. There are a lot of different ways to accomplish planning, so we selected this path, maybe the path needs to be a little bit wider. So, and I think the planning commission is a good avenue to do it. You've got enough discussion, they've got awareness of the ordinances and the property and all that other stuff, so I don't have any issue with that.
There's 4 or 6 other issues that we're gonna bring to you soon anyway, so, this is one.
So, all right, I'm game with that. So anybody okay, so we'll just consider that topic no decision necessary at this point. Next item, public comment.
Well, you're the only public left.
So this one is for you, Rick. I brought this up before about conflict of interest to you owning property in the downtown and voting on concerns around the downtown things. And again, tonight you voted on something which, the board member asked you to recuse yourself on, but, you don't seem to see that as your professional responsibility and as a member of the community. I've seen you do it before. I've objected to it, and I'm going to object to it again. And I hope the board looks at this and suggests to our supervisor or anybody on the board, you should recuse yourself if there's any conflict of interest. That's my point. And you fail to do that over and over and over again. And I just want to let you know I'm really disappointed, and I think it's very unprofessional on your part.
Number one, I think you've missed the point, because I have recused myself. And,
you did not tonight, okay?
And I'll
We're talking about tonight.
Yes, Gary.
Before it goes too far, in a charter township, every one of you has to vote on every item if you're here, unless you are excused by the vote of the remaining board members. And I don't believe that I've ever seen where the township board has adopted any conflict of interest rules for itself. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
No, and I will address the conflict of interest. If you think that owning property prior to becoming a supervisor has anything to do with this, tell me how I benefit from the expenditures that are made in that thing, but the rest of the community doesn't. As an individual, if what I voted on personally had in my pocket and nobody else's, that's a conflict of interest. Or had 3 people's and nobody else's, that's a conflict of interest. But when you're doing it for the community-wide purpose, I feel that there's no conflict of interest, and I disagree with anything beyond it. So thank you for your comment.
Just to respond to what Gary said, then maybe we should have a policy from our board about conflict of interest. People have property that they own, or a board member and property in an area that the board member is concerned. So maybe that's something our board needs to take up.
All right, thank you for your comments, appreciate it. On that note,
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
My mom passed away on Good Friday, and we had the service after a courageous battle with cancer. We had the service last Thursday. And I just want to thank the board members that came to the funeral home, and the fire chief came. It was really, it moved me a lot. It was very nice. It meant a lot to me. And Joe came to the luncheon in uniform, which, you know, he came from the prayer breakfast, but it still, it was nice. And it was just, I want to thank you, and I'm not trying to slight people that didn't come. I'm just saying it was really moved. And we had a quorum, but we didn't talk business. So just in case everybody's wondering about that, I was actually joking about that. Oh no, I got too many people here now. But it was a very nice service. It was nice to honor my mother. That was my mindset. And as sad as it was, she's in a better place because she was in bad shape at the end. But I just want to say it meant a lot to me. It meant a lot. You know, it meant a lot that you guys came. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Brian.
There was one other, just,
Yes.
this is a kind of silly comment, but sometime I'd like to see if we could consider getting electrical outlets under here. You know, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, so that if we have issues, we can plug in. And not a monumental issue, but just a thought, you know, run something under the carpet. And
Thank you for your comment. Okay, on that note, meeting is adjourned.
Stuff hanging in the ceiling. Gary, thank you very much. Thanks for coming, everybody. 74.